After the defendant rests, we will not be calling any witnesses, putting on any further evidence.
Okay. All right.
Do you think your case is stronger this time?
I thought it was strong last year. It's stronger. Yes, we just called more witnesses and laid out more of the case.
What do you feel about the jury?
I feel good about the jury.
Closing arguments expected tomorrow in Karen Reed's retrial. We're wondering about what the jury doesn't know this time around and if they have suspicions about 34 Fairview. Plus, now that the defense is rested, did they make good on their promises? We'll take a look back at some key moments from their opening statement. Also this hour, the massive manhunt for a father who allegedly killed his 3 young daughters. The sheriff on the case sits down with Court TV, speaking out on where the search stands. And designer bags, Van Cleef jewelry, and $10,000 rent. Diddy's ex and alleged victim, Jane, reveals gifts galore on cross-examination. Will it affect the music mogul's criminal case? It's all next, right here on Opening Statements. Welcome to Opening Statements. Good morning. I'm Julia Janae, filling in for Julie Grant. And just like in an actual trial where the opening statements tell you what the evidence will show, we're telling you what the trial coverage will show. What's ahead in court? So it's time for your daily docket.
On June 25th, 2019, Brandon Boudreaux decided that I was responsible for his family tragedy. And I'm really sorry that he feels that way.
No, Your Honor, I'm going to object again to testimony.
In Arizona, jury deliberations resume in Lori Daybell's attempted murder trial. Court is going to begin at 1 p.m. Eastern. And in New York City, alleged victim Jane is going to return for her 3rd day of cross-examination in the Diddy federal sex trafficking trial. That starts up at 9 a.m. Eastern. And in South Carolina, the prosecution's case continues in the coroner affair murder trial for defendant Megan Jackson. Testimony starts there at 9:30 a.m. Eastern. We'll keep you updated on all of those. But now to our top story, Karen Reed's retrial winding down. Closing arguments are scheduled to begin tomorrow, but not before what is sure to be a fiery charge conference this morning.
Yeah, you had said before you have butterflies at this stage. Are you
I do.
feeling those?
Yeah, of course.
Do you think your case is stronger this time?
I thought it was strong last year. It's stronger. Yes, we just called more witnesses and laid out more of the case.
What do you feel about the jury?
I feel good about the jury. Yeah, we selected them. I was there. I took part in it, and we chose fair and truthful, civic-minded citizens of Norfolk County. So I feel good.
That was defendant Karen Reed outside of the courthouse on Wednesday after her defense team rested its case. Jurors heard a total of 31 days of testimony, and they will be the ones who will determine whether or not she is responsible for the death of her Boston police officer boyfriend, John O'Keefe. This is the second jury to hear this trial, this evidence, and we're wondering about what this jury doesn't know this time around. We know the third-party culprit defense was something that the defense wanted to put in but was not allowed to come in based on the evidence that was laid. The defense suggested during the first trial that Brian Albert, the owner of 34 Fairview, and Brian Higgins, an ATF agent, had something to do with John O'Keefe's death. They didn't testify this time around, but let's take a look back to some of Brian Albert's testimony during that first trial.
By the way, the 34 Fairview house had been in your family at that time in 2022 for 2 generations?
My parents built the house in the late 70s, 79 maybe.
So if your parents are 1 generation, you and your family are another generation, 2 generations.
Right.
Nearly, maybe actually a little more than 50 years, half a century.
That what?
That it was the Albert home.
Yes.
The fact is, you listed that house for sale for the first time ever in November of 2022, correct?
That's the time we listed it, yes.
Just months after John O'Keefe was found on your lawn.
Objection.
Stand.
All right, again, Brian Albert did not testify in this trial. The Commonwealth didn't call him. The defense didn't call him. Brian Higgins also was not called, and several others who were inside of the house that night who testified the first time around not present inside of the courtroom. So we're asking the question, does this jury have suspicions of the inside of the 34 Fairview house, especially without all of that additional testimony? Here to discuss, we have a great panel this morning. We have retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffendorfer, and we have two trial attorneys, John Phillips and Michael J. Brown. Great to see you both. And we want to talk about what the jury didn't hear this time around. We'll talk about Brian Albert in a moment, but Jennifer Coffendorfer, let me start with you. How surprised were you that the defense rested their case where they did not bring in any of the people from inside of the house, and even the state not going to a rebuttal case?
Well, I was a little surprised that they didn't want to go with their third-party culprit theory that they were so strong on last year. It was interesting because Brennan was brilliant in diverting that decision really onto the defense, and the defense didn't want to have them on direct. They would have loved to have them on cross. Brennan wanted them on cross, so it was kind of interesting. As far as not doing any rebuttal, that really surprised me, but I think he has a read on that jury, and I think he thinks they're tired of testimony and they're ready to deliberate.
It is 31 days in. Michael J. Brown, talk more about this third-party culprit defense. For viewers who may be wondering, so what is required to get all of that in? There were a lot of limitations on opening statements from the judge saying you can't bring that in unless you've laid the foundation. Do you think they should have done more to lay that foundation in anticipation of closing arguments?
No, Julia, good morning, everybody. I think they did fine. I don't think that they want to call those witnesses on their direct case. Certainly Jackson wants to cross those witnesses, but you know, from a defense standpoint, it's like we always think, hey, we want to call this detective and he may add something to our case. Nothing could be further from the truth, because they're not going to be favorable for you. They're going to be hostile. They're going to be adverse, and you're really not going to benefit. And then it gives the prosecutor the opportunity to cross-examine, if you will, a favorable witness for them. The theme is there. It's already elicited. It's in the trial. And the fact that they don't have those witnesses for the defense, I don't think is a big deal. And that's exactly why the prosecutor did not call them, because he wants to get away from them, and he did not want to give Jackson the opportunity to cross-examine them. So I don't think it's a big deal that the defense did not call them.
That's interesting analysis, that the theme is still there and this jury can glean from what they've heard already. John Phillips, I couldn't help but latch on to something Karen Reed said when she was outside on the courthouse steps, speaking as she always does, even though she did not speak inside of the courtroom. She did not testify. But when she was talking about the jurors, she said, I took part in selecting them. And not that clients don't help their attorneys when they're making that decision on jurors, but I think Karen Reed has taken a bigger step than most clients in being involved. What do you think about that dynamic between Karen Reed and her attorneys and how involved she seems to be?
I agree. You know, I think the first trial gave everybody, and it always does, gives everybody a little bit more understanding and comfortability with what's going to happen, what witnesses are going to say, which, you know, also factors in probably with not calling Albert. Is he really going to help on the defense? But from the Karen Reed jury perspective, you know, she's one to use I, me, my quite a bit. And take some credit, but certainly that stood out to me, Julia, where she was saying, you know, this is my jury. I think they're going to be fair, and you know, every time they pan to her, she's got that face of confidence, which you want your client to have. You know, there's a line, but you know, I do think she's way more attentive, way more involved than last time, and you know, it helps for obviously a different result.
Oh, yeah. It's always surprising to me when it seems these attorneys ask her before they're done questioning a witness, what do you think? Do you have any more questions? Sometimes it seems like she is giving them another question to ask, but who knows this case better than she does? Jennifer Coffendorfer, let's talk Brian Albert. He's not on the stand this time around. How much of the case do you think the jury doesn't know? Because the first time around, we heard a lot more about Chloe, the getting rid of Chloe, her being rehomed, the basement. Your thoughts on if the jury was able to glean any of that from the testimony we had this time around, and is it important?
Well, I don't think they were. It seemed to me that a huge pivot took place with them really relying more on ARCA than even last year. ARCA was kind of the big punch last year, but this year they tried to make it resonate as really their whole case, that he couldn't have been hit. And so now, to me, all you're left with is the dog Chloe bit him, because they didn't bring in any evidence to show that really any humans were involved. They talked about it in opening statements, but they promised a lot and delivered very little.
Oh, we're going to talk about that in the next block for sure. But Michael J. Brown, again, to that point of what do these jurors know about what the defense perhaps wanted them to know about what happened inside of 34 Fairview. They spent a lot of time on it the first trial, but I'm wondering if they're hoping that the jurors are going to connect the dots. What do you think?
Well, number one is they're going to bring it together in closing to the extent they can. But let's look at the reality, Julia. Unless these folks have been living on Mars, they are aware of certain things. Despite the jury selection, despite the judge's instructions, this area, this community is saturated with this case. So although it may not be evidence, unfortunately, they may have it in their minds and they may be told about it. They may have discussed it. And again, it may be contrary to the judge's instructions, but I think they know more than they're leading on. And I think they know more than we expect them to because of that saturation of that community.
That's an interesting point. John Phillips, weigh in on that. All these jurors, what they know, what they don't know, and how much of the inside of 34 Fairview is going to be at play in deliberations.
Michael, you know jurors sit in a box. They don't listen to any other outside sources. They can't, Michael, they can't. Of course they do. Of course they've heard some of the whispers and all of that. But, at the end of the day, they've put a lot of eggs in this ARCA basket. I've run against ARCA. It's a clearinghouse of experts. You can basically hire an expert to say whatever you want. This one did really good. They did the reenactments are good. The impeachment of the other reenactment is good. But to your point, Julia, they didn't really give the facts to draw it all together, and closing's going to be limited to what, drawing it back on the facts from trial. And so they can't come up with just completely wild new theories that otherwise wasn't elicited at trial. But it's going to be interesting to see closings.
Oh, closings are going to be fascinating. And you're right. We're going to learn a lot about what they are able to get in front of this jury and what they are not. So coming up, we are not done talking about the Karen Reed trial. Speaking of closing arguments, we're actually going to go back to the openings. What did the defense promise in their opening, and did they make good on their promises? Plus, a man on the run after he allegedly killed his 3 daughters. The sheriff on the case sounding off this morning.
Travis, if you're listening, this is your opportunity to turn yourself in. Do the right thing, do what you need to do, and take accountability for your actions. We're not going to go away, we're not going to rest, and we're going to make sure we find you. You will be brought to justice.
Daybell, doomsday cult mom, convicted killer, and now defendant, and yet another high-profile trial. Will this be the final chapter in the saga
of the doomsday cult mom? The Lori Daybell conspiracy trial, today on Court TV.
Friday night, the WNBA is on iron. The Sky take on the Dream in the air. She's starting to cook. Then the Wings fly out west to battle the Aces. Vintage Chelsea Gray. Coverage begins Friday night at 7. Find Ion wherever you watch. Ion, it's on.
Pay attention to the street, the front yard of the home, and you'll see to the left side of the front yard in the corner, there'll be a car. It's the Lexus that we've spoken about, the defendant's Lexus.
And we'll be asking you specifically to consider the distance between that second floor front window and the front lawn.
Why not go on the view?
I don't ever want to go back to 34 Fairview.
Karen Reed may not ever want to go back to 34 Fairview, but the jury did visit that scene ahead of testimony in her retrial. And those jurors will soon have to decide if they believe the Commonwealth's case or the defense's theory about what happened at that residence. Now, on the heels of her defense, what it's resting on. And on Wednesday, they rested. We're wondering if they made good on their promises from opening statements. During opening statements back in April, Alan Jackson told these jurors several things, that defense experts would testify and that they wouldn't understand that John O'Keefe's death was not a result of a vehicle strike by Reed, as the Commonwealth claims. And they made it clear that there's evidence to back that up.
There was no collision with John O'Keefe. There was no collision. There was no collision. The facts will show that. The evidence will show that. The data will show that. The science will show that. And the experts will tell you that. Dr. Laposada will tell you with medical certainty. And in fact, John was not struck by a vehicle. Medically and scientifically, he could not have been struck by a vehicle. She will tell you that the patterned abrasions on John's right arm, they're not the result of being struck by a car or a taillight. You'll take one look at these injuries and you'll agree with Dr. Laposada. The evidence will show that these injuries are from an animal, like a large dog, like the large dog that was inside the Albert house that night. Rather, Dr. Laposada will tell you with medical certainty that the injury pattern to his scalp was produced by an impact from a raised or ledged surface, a surface that does not exist on Brian Albert's front lawn where John was found. The medical evidence will establish no hypothermia, no injuries from a car strike, no collision with a motor vehicle. You'll learn that those facts will add to the mounting and the overwhelming evidence that there was no collision and John O'Keefe's body was moved onto that lawn. You'll find that this is yet additional reasonable doubt in the case.
So do you believe that Karen Reed's defense made good on those promises they made in openings? Let's bring back in our panel to discuss this. We have retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Coffendorfer. We have attorney John Phillips with us and attorney Michael J. Brown. Jennifer Coffendorfer, let me start with you. The body was moved. That's what Alan Jackson said the evidence would show, that John O'Keefe was injured somewhere warmer and then placed outside. Not looking at whether or not they did it well, but do you think that they did present evidence and that enough evidence came out in this trial that could potentially have these jurors wondering if the body was moved?
No, I do not, because if you look at the digital evidence of the cell phone and how it lost temperature, if you look at the situation where that cell phone did not move after the strike, if you look at the evidence that shows that car was thrown into reverse at 24 miles an hour, if you look at the DNA on the pieces of the taillight, if you look at the hair that was an O'Keefe hair left on the back of the vehicle, if you look at the small fragments from that taillight that were embedded in John O'Keefe's shirt, they did not overcome any of the actual evidence you can touch and feel.
Michael, looking at it from a legal standpoint, is it enough for them to reference it in closing that the body was moved, or you see from this evidence that the body was moved?
Well, Julie, the standard is fair commentary on the evidence. So if there's any evidence out there that's presented by either side or that's elicited during direct or cross-examination, the defense attorney, Jackson, has the ability to have fair commentary on the evidence, which means, in essence, he can make an argument based on what's been presented. And it's really, the issue is how far can you take that argument based on the evidence? But usually the judge will give you a lot of latitude. And I think it's certainly something he can argue if there's enough there and take it and run with it. So, yeah, I think he could.
John, there was another promise made during opening statements. Alan Jackson told these jurors that the evidence will show and make you wonder why officers and investigators got rid of their phones. Now, let's take a look back at the first trial. Brian Higgins was on the stand and asked that very question.
In September of 2022, you were served with a preservation order for your phone, were you not?
Yes.
After September of 2022, you never received anything in writing that canceled or lifted that preservation order, correct?
That's correct.
After September of 2022, you made the decision to dispose of your phone without consulting anybody about the decision to throw out your phone, correct?
Yes.
Brian Higgins went on to say that he smashed the SIM card, that he took it to a military base to throw it away before he turned that phone over. John Phillips, though, this time around, we didn't hear Brian Higgins on the stand or anyone to talk about the military base throwaway. Will they be able to talk about investigators getting rid of their phones in closing arguments?
Yeah, going back to what Michael said, you know, that's probably outside the fair commentary on the evidence. You know, all of the police conspiracies and the Brian Alberts and the Fairview, you know, road stuff, you know, they didn't really focus in on that to give enough factual basis to go there. And you know, the other thing that really got me about the opening promise is I believe the standard is not just medical certainty, but, you know, based upon reason. And you know, there's going to be, I mean, we've heard it already just in the last couple of minutes, you know, that you can draw a line down the center and see how things stack on both sides, which, by the way, is why this resulted in a hung jury the first time. So, you know, are we headed there again is my question.
No, it's a great question. Jennifer, another opening promise, I'll say, that the defense made is that you will see evidence that Michael Proctor pre-selected Karen Reed, that he from the beginning felt that she was the culprit. We didn't have Michael Proctor inside of the courtroom this time around, but there were texts. So your thoughts about if that's going to be enough evidence for this jury to still consider Michael Proctor when we heard a lot of people talking about exactly what he said?
Well, I think, Julia, that the defense thought that the prosecution was going to call him and that they were going to have all that fodder to back up their statement in opening, but they didn't call them, and then the defense chose not to call him. So basically, all we have are a handful now of texts that were able to be brought in that show he was very unprofessional in his language talking about Karen Reed, but nothing showing that he was predisposed or picked her out in any way. So I think that falls flat.
Michael, if there is a lack of follow through on some of these promises that were made in opening, 31 trial days away, which is even more days when you talk about the calendar, what's the penalty? Is there really a concern from jurors? Do they penalize a side if they don't hear something that relates to what happened in openings?
There is, you know, although the burden is on the prosecution and that's told to them numerous times, when you as a defense attorney promise things in your opening, the jury is going to hold you to it, unfortunately, despite the law and despite the judge's instructions.
A lot came out in those openings, and now we are looking ahead to closings. Those are scheduled to start tomorrow. Our thanks to our panel. I know we have to say goodbye to Michael and Jennifer. Thank you for being on. John Phillips is staying with us. We have still ahead on opening statements this. We're remembering the 3 young daughters allegedly killed by their own father. This morning, the latest from the sheriff on the massive manhunt that's happening, plus.
And you didn't get the Chanel bag. This other person was getting a Chanel bag, right?
No, I only got trauma.
You got a Van Cleef necklace, right?
There was that, and
you got a Bottega bag, right?
After 3.5 years, I really don't think I garnered much from this relationship.
Designer bags and expensive jewelry. Will these gifts affect Diddy's trial? More on the contentious cross of alleged victim Jane.
It's moments like these where we see our community coming together, paying respects to those young individuals that lost their lives. I want to pay respects to Peyton, Evelyn, Olivia. Your memory will never be forgotten, and we will not stop pursuing justice for you until those that were accountable for this are found.
This morning, we are following developments, the latest on the search for accused child killer Travis Decker, as we give voice to the victims in this case, his 3 little girls. Authorities say they're closing in on Decker, who's been on the run for more than a week now. The bodies of his 3 young daughters, Peyton, Olivia, and Evelyn, were found at a campground in central Washington state. Court TV's Julie Grant spoke with Chelan County's Sheriff Mike Morrison about this search. Take a listen.
Sheriff, good morning to you. Thank you for being with us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. Could we start, please, with the latest Travis Decker sighting? It's our understanding he may have been spotted. What can you tell us about that, please?
We had a person of interest that was spotted up in the Enchantments, which is more of a recreational alpine lake area within our county. And then that subject, we believe, might have gone down one of the back access routes into an area called Ingalls Creek, progressing towards an area we call Valley High. So we've been searching that area with our local and federal partners and attempting to contact that subject, determine was it Mr. Decker or was it not?
Sheriff, does it seem to you then that it's unlikely he could have gone to Canada? There's been a lot of speculation that perhaps he may have fled there. Based on what you know now, does it appear that he's staying in Washington, at least for the time being?
We're not going to rule anything out, but certainly we're tracking down all leads, and we're going to look at areas of interest, people of interest. But until he's accounted for, we're taking it as whereabouts are unknown.
Mm-hmm. Sheriff, how dangerous is Travis Decker?
Well, since we've seen the senseless violence and the act towards Evelyn, Peyton, and Olivia, we certainly feel that he's a danger to the community, and we're looking forward to having him in custody.
Most certainly, Sheriff. Speaking of those three beautiful little angels, Peyton, Olivia, and Evelyn, coming upon that crime scene couldn't have been easy, I'm sure, for your deputies. Would you speak to what that was like for them, making such an awful, heartbreaking discovery?
I'll do my best. I mean, I wasn't at the scene, but clearly I'm going on to 20 years in law enforcement. Most within this occupation see a lot of violence, a lot of horrific scenes that I think a lot within society don't get to see. So we understand the stress that comes with that. We've had crisis intervention, stress management teams, and peer support teams on scene, not only supporting and offering services for our deputies, but we've also been in town hall meetings over the last couple of days. We're going to have one more tonight, offering services to our community because we understand there are victims with us in this tragedy. And it's just something that you're seeing more and more is that we take on a lot with a lot of incidents that a lot of citizens within the community don't get to experience, yet we see them almost day after day. And we recognize the weight that that carries on our deputies, and we're doing everything possible to make sure they have the services provided to them. But I commend them. I mean, they've stayed focused. Our detectives have done an excellent job. Our deputies have done an excellent job. Our dispatch center, they're taking on a lot too. They're taking calls. They took the initial 911 call on this. And we understand that everyone involved in this situation has experienced some kind of trauma in regards to this. And we're going to do everything we can to make sure they're supported.
Oh, that's wonderful, Sheriff. You're right. It is traumatic just going through this. And we certainly commend those brave men and women who put on the uniform like you do every single day. We thank you all for your service. Tell me, Sheriff, we've seen the mugshot from Travis Decker from in the past. What does his criminal history look like?
We're not seeing a lot of criminal history. We do see that he had some time when he was in the military, and it sounds like that ended probably on terms that he wasn't expecting or wanting. But overall, in talking with other individuals, it just sounded like he was a regular person, kind of trying to figure out his way into society after his time in the military. But this was unexpected from what we're gathering. But clearly, as I stated before, it was an act of pure evil, cowardice. And we want to hold them accountable for it. We need to make sure that those girls' voices are heard, the families represented, and I don't want to glorify him. I mean, as far as we're concerned, he is a wanted fugitive, and that we plan on holding him accountable for his actions and setting up that date where he can stand in front of our court system and accept the justice that's coming.
Sheriff, to be clear, no criminal convictions, though, in Travis Decker's past?
Not that I'm aware of, but again, we've just been primarily focused on locating him, getting a better understanding of the crime scene, which we thank Washington State Patrol's Crime Lab for coming out, helping us gather evidence, process the scene, the FBI, the U.S. Marshals Service. Our focus is on the acts of that evening, as we believe that when they happened, and holding him accountable and finding him.
Mm-hmm, certainly. Sheriff, in terms of what, if anything, members of the public can do and should do if they live in the vicinity that you're currently searching. What advice do you have for anybody who may be watching this interview and looking to help and looking to provide information if it comes their way?
Remain vigilant. Keep your distance. Don't make direct contact. We recognize we're a medium-sized agency when you come to agencies across the United States. If we didn't have our public supporting us the way they did and the way they continue to do, we would certainly be in a different position. But, we have over 80,000 citizens here within Chelan County. They're highly supportive of law enforcement. We recognize that. We don't take it for granted. They've flooded us with tips, which is a good thing. Thanks to our partners at the FBI for helping us process through all that information. And we recognize that, again, we couldn't do it without the citizens of Chelan County and also those outside of this county through Washington State and other states that have called in with potential tips. We've appreciated those agencies stepping up to assist us. But if you're a member of the public, we want you to remain vigilant. If you see something, say something, let's put the pressure on them. We don't want them to feel comfortable. We want them to know that it's not only an agency like Chelan County Sheriff's Office and our federal partners and our state partners and our local partners that are pursuing him, but also a whole entire community. We want him. We want to hold him accountable. He is an adversary to this community, and we won't rest until he is found.
Keep up the great work. Sheriff Mike Morrison with the Chelan County Sheriff's Department and the state of Washington. Thank you for your time this morning. We'll look forward to getting more updates from you soon.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on.
And as we go to break, we want to remember 9-year-old Peyton, 8-year-old Evelyn, and 5-year-old Olivia. We know that they loved wearing dresses, dancing, and playing soccer. 3 little girls who had so much life left to live.
Karen Reed is in the midst of the retrial of the century.
She is factually innocent. She's guilty.
There's something wrong in this county.
Come at me.
John O'Keefe was killed by that defendant, Karen Reed.
She's the victim of a corrupted investigation that was never about the truth.
Another big day here at the Dedham Courthouse.
Fight on. Nothing's breaking me, Matt.
You'll see it all unfold right here on Court TV.
The Karen Reed murder retrial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Where my life is at right now, I don't have no time for no games, baby girl. Me and you can be mad, I can have a spat, we can have whatever. Then after that, you better get on your job. That's really, that's all it is. Cause you got me on my job. Nah, it ain't never gonna work like that over here. You know what I'm saying? I was trying not to leave this message, but you have left me no choice.
We are moments away from testimony resuming in Diddy's federal sex trafficking trial. The former girlfriend of Sean Diddy Combs and alleged victim, Jane, returns to the stand for her 3rd day of cross-examination, 6th day of testimony in total. And on Wednesday, the focus shifted quickly from Jane and Diddy's sex life to designer handbags and high-end jewelry, creating these contentious moments between one of the government's star witnesses and the defense counsel, which captured through AI-generated voice technology we can listen to together.
And you say, so I come in and do that while you go back to being laid up and booed for days. I see what I'm turning into in your eyes while homegirl is literally ran through and your friends behind your back. And did you get her a Chanel bag on top of that? LOL. Crazy. I don't like how you're treating me and what I'm seeing. I need a breather and a break from you. This doesn't make me feel good at all. Your true intentions with me are in plain sight. Hope you had a great Thanksgiving, right? Yes. Let's unpack that. You are saying, so I come in, meaning if you were to travel there, he'd go back to being laid up with the girl for days, right?
Just rewind a little bit. So I mean to say, so I come in, meaning and do that, meaning hotel nights. And then while you go back, meaning after that, you go back to being laid up, which means spending quality time and boot up for days with another girl he's dating and giving this girl quality time, and not me after I've done a hotel night with strangers.
And then you say, and did you get her a Chanel bag on top of that? LOL. Crazy.
Yes. My misdirected anger towards the women when my anger is truly for him, and how mistreated I feel in this relationship.
And are you mistreated because this other person got a Chanel bag? Why are you saying Chanel bag?
I'm being mistreated because the pressure that my partner was putting on me was for me to have sex with strangers. And when he leaves me, he goes and spends quality time and shopping and dining, et cetera, with the others.
Did this person post a Chanel bag on their stories on Instagram?
Yes.
And you didn't get the Chanel bag. This other person was getting a Chanel bag, right?
No, I only got trauma.
You got a Van Cleef necklace, right?
There was that, and
you got a Bottega bag, right?
After 3.5 years, I really don't think I garnered much from this relationship.
What is a Bottega bag?
I'm sure you have one.
I actually don't. What is a Bottega bag?
It's a high-end luxury purse for women.
How much do Bottega bags run?
How much does my body cost?
Jane, I'm going to ask you to just respond to Ms. Garagos's questions, and your lawyer can follow it up.
Okay, thank you.
I'm asking roughly how much a Bottega bag costs.
Anywhere between $1,500 and $5,000.
Okay. And a Chanel bag. How much does a Chanel bag cost?
I don't know.
And after these text messages, you made the decision not to get on a plane?
I can't recall.
Let's look at the next page. You say, ain't nobody just come to work out. She's been there for days and posting the studio. Stop lying. Funny thing is, I don't even care. I don't even care who you lay up with, right?
Yes.
And if we go to the next page, you're saying, you've been saying you miss me and want to see me, but you're lying. You just want the hotel, right?
Yes.
That was testimony from yesterday. So the 20th day of trial today will be the 21st day of testimony. And we're asking, how do Diddy's gifts affect the trial? Let's bring in our panel to discuss. We still have with us attorney John Phillips, and now we have into the show entertainment commentator Holland Reed is with us, and domestic violence expert and former law enforcement officer Claudia King. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. John Phillips, let me start with you. Chanel bags and Bottega bags and Van Cleef jewelry. How do you think that impacts this trial?
Look, the whole core of this trial is sex trafficking. It's using influence to not only, have sexual favors for Diddy, but others in these sex parties and the life of opulence. Normal relationships are built on love and trust and not, Chanel bags and, Tom Ford Blazers or whatever. And so you have, you certainly are going to have both sides kind of focus in on the swag, right? The gifts, both as collateral and as favors to keep that lifestyle going.
Yeah, Holland Reed, weigh in on what you thought when you heard that part of the testimony, that there's this opulence, these gifts that are being given to someone who's now on the stand, and the prosecution is saying she is an alleged victim of the defendant.
I'm just going to completely agree. It's grooming by luxury. It's a lifestyle that people go after, and it didn't always start off as abuse. It starts off with the grooming, with the gifts, for manipulation, for coercion, and then also to kind of, again, keep that lifestyle going. It's a reward system for the loyalty and the silence, excuse me. So I heard basically the culture also, again, being exposed. You can go to Instagram, you can go to any rapper or singer or anybody, just someone in the middle of America, and people love to show off gifts. That doesn't mean that you are consenting to being in a room with two men on nights that you don't wish. It means you maybe want to be with your partner, and there's some transaction that goes along with that. But it does just continue to expose what the culture is like, especially someone of his caliber, someone of his wealth. That's a drop in the bucket. A Chanel bag for Diddy is nothing. It's probably $10 to someone else. So I see it as the same thing that we've been saying this entire time. It's a part of the culture. It's also a part of his grooming. And he starts off that way, but then he uses it as a tactic later down the road to continue to keep these people under his thumb.
I'm so glad you mentioned that about this being a drop in the bucket for a billionaire. Yeah, these numbers sound large to the average person, but not perhaps for someone who is in Diddy's inner circle. Claudia King, as a domestic violence victim advocate and expert, talk about how money is used as control in cases like this. And does it damage cases sometimes when victims come forward, but if officers understand and see that they continue to return and receive money or receive funds from someone who they're accusing as an abuser, does that impact the case or the investigation?
I think sometimes it can impact the case if an officer or an investigator doesn't truly understand domestic violence and the cycle of domestic violence. Finances can be used in a lot of ways to control a victim. You know, sometimes abusers will say that they don't want their partner to work, and they portray it originally as, oh, I just want you to be able to relax, stay home, take care of me. But sometimes what they're really doing as an abuser is taking away that person's ability to earn income so that they become more dependent on the abuser. So I can definitely see, as far as the gifts go, how in some jurors' minds it could be difficult to understand. But as the previous guests have said, this is a drop in the bucket to him. This is like someone else spending $10 on their significant other. So the prosecution really needs to make that point stick with the jury and continue to explain that this is an abusive form of financial control.
Another point that the prosecution will likely have to explain to these jurors, because it came out on cross. Let's take a listen back to Jane being asked about her rent now.
Now, after you got the house, he sent you, I think, you said a random wire of $20,000, right?
Yes.
And that's because you needed furniture for the home?
Yes.
And Mr. Combs, you testified, put $20,000 of an investment into your businesses, right?
Yes.
And so when you say that you looked up and there's nothing I did with my life in these years, you had two businesses that one is now profitable, right?
I would say that had I not dove headstrong on this relationship, I probably would have been a bit more successful in that time frame, but that's neither here nor there. So that's my answer to that.
All right. We know from the testimony, John Phillips, that there was rent that is still being paid from the defendant, legal fees that are still being paid by the defendant. If you're the prosecution, would that be something that you would try to curtail? I know it's not the client, as in if the defense attorneys would commune with Diddy to ask about whether or not he should still be paying these things for someone who's taking the stand. But talk about what that does to a jury when someone's on the stand accusing someone, but yet they are still receiving financial aid.
It gets real complicated. I've had that in some of my cases where you just wish that they'd sever ties and there wouldn't be, financial incentives going back and forth, or even non-economic incentives going back and forth, and it just gets messy. But ultimately, what you have here is a level of coercive control from the money, from the finances, from the investments, versus unfortunately, she kind of went too far with the statement, all I got was trauma, because that just set up Ms. Garagos to kind of go after, oh, but you also got this, you got this, you got this. And these were parts of a normal relationship, as normal as that can be, from that, looking up there at their perch. But yeah, you generally want everything clean and in a easily dissectable petri dish, but it doesn't exist like that in the halls of justice.
That is true. Prosecution cannot pick their victims. Holland, I want to give you a final word really on whether or not you would want more context on the continual payments to this alleged victims. Does it surprise you that there's still that financial transaction perhaps, or is there more that you want to know about what this alleged victim's life is like?
I honestly think that Jane has been doing a very good job. She has not been on the stand saying that she did not consent to these things. She was just saying that everything has gone too far. As far as the money is concerned, honestly, I feel like she feels she is owed this. She feels that she is She feels that she is owed this simply because of the trauma. She's owed this money because of what she's gone through. So she's going to continue to take it. She already said she's not suing him. She hadn't planned to sue him. So I think that as far as the context is concerned, we've kind of wrapped that up. But it would be nice, like the other gentleman said, if they would have severed ties. But there's nothing clean about any of this.
Absolutely. Great analysis from everyone. Thank you for being on. John Phillips and Holland Reed, I know we have to say goodbye to you, but Claudia King, you are sticking around. That's it for opening statements.